I'm Jenna Lemire, and I am going to be reading chapter 8 now of Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Marshall B. Rosenberg, PhD. And this is for a book club that I'm in over at brightanddark.org. It is a really cool community of a lot of magical practitioners. And this was one that we've decided to read for that. And I'm not a big reader. And so I thought, I'm neurodivergent, and I've learned a lot about like parallel play and that kind of stuff, or a lot of people may need sort of a sounding board. This also with the ADHD part of me, I often wait till the very last moment, so where something has a sense of urgency in order to do it. And of course, book club is tomorrow night. And so I've waited till the last minute to do this, but that's just, but getting there, I don't need to put additional judgment on it. I can just be like, yep, that's my life. And I love myself. It's okay, sweetie. You can be exactly like this. It's only society that has tried to tell you all these stupid deadlines all the time. And when things really do matter, your body just knows naturally how to do that. So it's just the system breaking down, and you will be feeling more included soon. Okay. Chapter 8, The Power of Empathy. Empathy that heals. Carl Rogers described the impact of empathy on its recipients. When someone really hears you without passing judgment on you, without trying to take responsibility for you, without trying to mold you, it feels damn good. When I have been listened to and when I have been heard, I am able to re-perceive my world in a new way and go on. It is astonishing how elements that seem insoluble become soluble when someone listens. How confusions that seem irremediable turn into relatively clear flowing streams when one is heard. One of my favorite stories about empathy comes from the principal of an innovative school. She had returned after lunch one day to find Millie, an elementary student, sitting dejectedly in her office, waiting to see her. She sat down next to Millie, who had begun, "Mrs. Anderson, have you ever had a week where everything you did hurt somebody else and you never intended to hurt anyone at all?" Oh my God, this is my life. "Yes," the principal replied. "I think I understand." Whereupon Millie proceeded to describe her week. By now, the principal related, "I was quite late for an important meeting, still had my coat on, and anxious not to keep a room full of people waiting. So I asked, 'Millie, what can I do for you?' Millie reached over, took both my shoulders in her hands, looked me straight in the eyes, and said very firmly, 'Mrs. Anderson, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to listen.' This was one of the most significant moments of learning in my life, taught to me by a child. So I thought, never mind the room full of adults waiting for me. Millie and I moved over to a bench that afforded us more privacy and sat, my arm around her shoulders, her head on my chest, and her arm around my waist, while she talked until she was done. And it didn't take that long. One of the most satisfying aspects of my work is to hear how individuals have used NVC to strengthen their ability to connect empathically with others. My friend Lawrence, who lives in Switzerland, described how upset she had felt when her 6-year-old son had stormed away angrily while she was still talking to him. Isabel, her 10-year-old daughter, who had accompanied her to a recent NVC workshop, remarked, "So you're really angry, Mom. So you're really angry, Mom." I don't know how you'd like, sorry, workshop remark. "So you're really angry, Mom. You'd like for him to talk when he's angry and not run off?" Lawrence marveled at how, upon hearing Isabel's words, she had felt an immediate diminishing of tension and was subsequently able to be more understanding with her son when he returned. A college instructor described how relationships between students and faculty had begun or had been affected when several members of the faculty learned to listen empathically and to express themselves more vulnerably and honestly. The students opened up more and more and told us about the various personal problems that were interfering with their students. The more they talked about it, the more work they are able to complete. Even though this kind of listening took a lot of their time, we were glad to spend it in this way. Unfortunately, the dean got upset. He said we were not counselors and should spend more time teaching and less time talking with the students. When I asked how the faculty had dealt with this, the instructor replied, "We empathize with the dean's concern." That's funny. We heard that he felt worried and wanted to know that we weren't getting involved in things that we couldn't handle. We also heard that he needed reassurance that the time spent on talking wasn't cutting into their teaching responsibilities. He seemed relieved by the way we listened to him. We continued to talk with the students because we could see that the more we listened to them, the better that they did in their studies. When we work in a hierarchical, structured institution, there is a tendency to hear commands and judgments from those higher up on the hierarchy. While we may easily empathize with our peers and those in less powerful positions, we may find ourselves being defensive or apologetic instead of empathic in the presence of those we identify as our superiors. This is why I was particularly pleased that these faculty members had remembered to empathize with their dean as well as with their students. It's harder to empathize with those who appear to possess more power, status, or resources. Oh my God, that is so true. Empathy, you know what that feels like though, is I'll bet it's the leveling thing. I'll bet it's because somebody is seen in an authority figure that there's some of that energy that is then like being taken back to not give the empathy to the person in charge as a way of almost leveling that because they felt like they took something. Oh my God, there's so many patterns going off on my head right now. Okay, where was I? Empathy and the ability to be vulnerable. Because we are all called to reveal our deepest feelings and needs, we may sometimes find it challenging to express ourselves in NVC. Self-expression becomes easier, however, after we empathize with others because we will then have touched their humanness and realized the common qualities we share. The more we connect with the feelings and needs behind their words, the less frightening it is to open up to other people. The situations where we are most reluctant to express vulnerability are often those where we want to maintain a tough image for fear of losing authority or control. Once I showed my vulnerability to some members of a street gang in Cleveland by acknowledging the hurt I was feeling and my desire to be treated with more respect. "Oh, look," one of them remarked, "he's feeling hurt. Isn't that too bad?" At which point all of his friends chimed in laughing. Here again, I could interpret them as taking advantage of my vulnerability. Option 2, blame others. Or I could empathize with the feelings and needs behind their behavior. Option 4. If, however, I have an image that I am being humiliated and taken advantage of, I may be too wounded, angry, or scared to be able to empathize. At such a moment, I would need to withdraw physically in order to offer myself some empathy or to request it from a reliable source. After I've discovered the needs that had been so powerfully triggered in me and have received adequate empathy for them, I shall be ready to return and empathize with the other party. In situations of pain, I recommend first getting the empathy necessary to go beyond the thoughts occupying our heads so as to recognize our deeper needs. As I listened closely to the gang member's remark, "Oh, look, he's feeling hurt. Isn't that too bad?" and the laughter that followed, I sensed that he and his friends were annoyed and not wanting to be subjected to guilt trips and manipulation. They may have been reacting to people in their past who use phrases like "that hurts me" to imply disapproval. Since I didn't verify it with them out loud, I have no way of knowing if my guess was in fact accurate. Just focusing my attention there, however, kept me from either taking it personally or getting angry. Instead of judging them for ridiculing or treating me disrespectfully, I concentrated on hearing the pain and needs behind such behavior. "Hey," one of them bursts out, "this is a bunch of crap you're offering us. Suppose there are members of another gang here and they have guns and you don't, and they say just stand there and talk to them. Pfft, crap." Then everybody was laughing again, and again I directed my attention to their feelings and needs. So it sounds like you're really fed up with learning something that has no relevance in those situations. Yeah, if you lived in this neighborhood, you'd know this is a bunch of crap. So you need to trust that someone teaching you something has some knowledge of your neighborhood. Damn right. Some of these dudes would blast you away before you got 2 words out of your mouth. And then you need to trust and you need to trust that someone trying to teach you something understands the dangers around here too. I continue to listen in this manner, sometimes verbalizing what I heard, sometimes not. This continued for 45 minutes and I sensed a shift. They felt that I was truly understanding them. A counselor in the program noticed the shift and asked them out loud, "What do you think of this man?" Or what do you think of this man? The gentleman who had been giving me the toughest time replied, "He's the best speaker we've ever had." Astonished, the counselor turned to me and whispered, "But you haven't said anything." In fact, I had said a lot by demonstrating that there was nothing they could throw at me that I couldn't be translated into universal human feelings and needs. On the side here, it says, "We say a lot by listening for other people's feelings and needs." Using empathy to diffuse anger. I think that part right, like, is the most important thing when it comes to all of this for the beginner that's maybe in the position where they think they have to do this right, or there's a rule, or like it feels intimidating, is just this, is that the key words here are listening for people's feelings and their needs. And if we can somehow accurately paraphrase that we believe we understand their feelings and what they need because of their feelings, which doesn't mean we have to give it to them, because we all have our own stuff, but it would be very helpful to, I mean, that seems like a good way to zero in, just listening for feelings and needs. Okay. Using empathy to diffuse danger. The ability to offer empathy to people in stressful situations can diffuse potential violence. A teacher in the inner city of St. Louis related an incident where she had consciously stayed after school to help, or conscientiously stayed after school to help a student, even though teachers were warned to leave the building for their own safety after classes were dismissed. A stranger entered her classroom where the following exchange took place. Young man says, "Take off your clothes." Teacher, noticing that he was shaking, "I'm sensing this is very scary for you." Because the guy that said that to her, he was, "Okay, I'm sensing this is scary for you." Young man, "Did you hear me? God damn it, take off your clothes." Teacher says, "I'm sensing you're really pissed off right now and you want me to do what you're telling me." Young man, "You're damn right, and you're going to get hurt if you don't." Teacher says, "I'd like you to tell me if there's some other way of meeting your needs that wouldn't hurt me." Young man said, "I said take them off." Teacher, "I can hear how much you want this. At the same time, I want you to know how scared and horrible I feel, how grateful I'd be if you'd leave without hurting me." Young man, "Give me your purse." The teacher handed the stranger her purse, relieved not to be raped. She later described how each time she empathized with the young man, he could sense his becoming less adamant in his intention to follow through with the rape. A metropolitan police, I can't say that word. A police officer attending a follow-up training in the NVC once greeted me with this account. "I'm sure you had us practicing empathy with angry people last time. Just a few days after our session, I went to arrest someone in the public housing project. When I brought him out, my car was surrounded by 60 people screaming things at me like, 'Let him go. He didn't do anything. You police are a bunch of rapist pigs,' or racist pigs. Although I was skeptical and empathy would help, I didn't have any other options. So I reflected back the feelings that were coming at me. I said things like, 'So you don't trust my reasons for arresting this man. You think that this has got to do with race.' After several minutes of my continuing to reflect their feelings, the group became less hostile. In the end, they opened a path so that I could get to my car." That's interesting. Feels like there's an even deeper thing with that these days that I don't know how well even that would have worked. But well, yeah, interesting. Just because he wouldn't have had enough time to go further. "So you don't trust my reasons for arresting this man? You think it has to do with his race?" just by saying that, like, I don't know, they would be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Anyway, whatever. I'll move on. That's just my own thoughts on this. Okay. Finally, I'd like to illustrate how, I mean, I know that that was supposed to be a good excerpt and showing like how that can help in that case. I'm just still trying, like, I wish I could buy it more. I do think like what he did with the kids in the classroom, like calming them, but that like took a while of him saying it with everyone. This sounds like he's just got like an assailant or whatever the perpetrator, whatever, what is the accused, whatever it is, the word that's PC, and is just taking him to the car. Like, I'm even assuming it's a him, who knows who it is. This person is being taken to the car. And yeah, so in that, like, I don't know if those sentences, anyway, whatever. Go ahead and write in the comments below what you think, that you, if you think that that would de-escalate it. I'm not sure what I'd say instead though. Oh my gosh. I think I'd have to just add some more stuff to it. But whatever. Okay. Finally, I'd like to illustrate how a young woman used empathy to bypass violence during her night shift at a drug detoxification center in Toronto. The young woman recounted this story during a second workshop she attended in NVC at 11 p.m. one night, a few weeks after her first NVC training. A man who'd obviously been taking drugs walked off the street and demanded a room. The young woman started to explain to him that all of the rooms had been full for the night. She was about to hand the man an address of another detox center when he hurled her onto the ground. The next thing I knew, he was sitting across my chest holding a knife to my throat and shouting, "You bitch, don't lie to me. You have to have a room. You do too have a room." She then proceeded to apply her training by listening for his feelings and needs. "You remember to do that under those conditions?" I asked. Oh, see, now they're even talking about other these conditions. So we'll maybe learn more, and I jump to conclusions. Let's see. "What choice did I have? Desperation sometimes makes good communicators of us all. You know, Marshall," she added, that joke you told in the workshop really helped me. In fact, I think it saved my life." "What joke?" he said. "Remember when you said never put your butt in the face of an angry person?" But with the one T. I was all ready to start arguing with him. I was about to say, "But I don't have a room," when I remembered your joke. It had really stayed with me because only the week before I was arguing with my mother and she had said to me, "I could kill you when you answer but to everything I say." Imagine if my own mother was angry enough to kill me for using that word. What would this man have done if I had said, "But I don't have a room," when he was screaming at me? I have no doubt he would have slit my throat. So instead, I took a deep breath and said, "It sounds like you're really angry and you want to be given a room." He yelled back, "I may be an addict, but by God, I deserve respect. I'm tired of nobody giving me respect. My parents don't give me respect. I'm going to get respect." Just focused on his feelings and needs and said, "Are you fed up not getting the respect that you want?" "How long did this go on?" I asked. "Oh, about another 35 minutes, she replied. "That must have been terrifying." No, not after the first couple interchanges, because then something else we learned here became apparent. When I concentrated on listening for his feelings and needs, I stopped seeing him as a monster. I could see, just as you said, how people who seem like monsters are simply human beings whose language and behavior sometimes keep us from seeing their humanness. The more I was able to focus my attention on his feelings and needs, the more that I saw him as a person full of despair, whose needs weren't being met. I became confident that if I held my attention there, I wouldn't be hurt. After he'd received the empathy he needed, he got off me, put the knife away, and I helped him find a room at another center. Delighted that she'd learned to respond empathically in such an extreme situation, I asked curiously, "What are you doing back here? It sounds like you've mastered NVC and should be out teaching others what you've learned." "Now I need you to help me with a hard one," she said. "I'm almost afraid to ask. What could be harder than that?" "Now I need you to help me with my mother. Despite all the insight I got into that butt phenomenon," but with one T, "you know what happened at supper the other evening when I told my mother what had happened with the man. She said, 'You're going to cause your father and me to have a heart attack if you keep that job. You simply have to find different work.' So guess what I said to her? 'But mother, it's my life.' I could have asked I couldn't have asked for a more compelling example of how difficult it can be to respond empathically to one's own family members. And then on the side, it says, it may be difficult to empathize with those who are closest to us. Oh, truth. Empathy in hearing someone's no. Because of our tendency to read rejection, I need a cross. No. Because of our tendency to read rejection into someone else's no, and I don't want to, these are important messages for us to be able to empathize with. If we take them personally, we will feel hurt without understanding what's actually going on within the other person. When we shine the light of consciousness on the feelings and needs behind someone else's no, however, we become cognizant of what they are wanting that prevents them from responding as we would like. One time I asked a woman during a workshop break to join me and other participants for some ice cream nearby. No, she replied brusquely. 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 I've never seen that word before either. The tone of her voice led me to interpret her answer as rejection until I reminded myself to tune into the feelings and needs she might be expressing through her no. I sense that you are angry, I said. Is that so? No, she replied. It's just that I don't want to be corrected every time I open my mouth. Now I sense that she was fearful rather than angry. I checked this out by asking, so you're feeling fearful and want to protect yourself from being in a situation where you might be judged for how you communicate? Yes, she affirmed. I can imagine sitting in the ice cream shop with you and having you notice everything I say. Or that's what she said, sorry. Yes, she affirmed. I can imagine sitting in the ice cream shop with you and having you notice everything I'm saying. I then discovered that the way I had been providing feedback in the word shop had been frightening to her. I can see that. This is scary. Like, yeah. Like, what's this face? Who is this part of me? Hi, I would love you too. Okay. I then discovered that the way I'd been providing feedback in the workshop had been frightening her. My empathy for her message had taken the sting out of her no for me. I heard her desire to avoid receiving similar feedback in public, assuring her that I wouldn't evaluate her communication in public. I then conferred with her on ways to give feedback that would leave her feeling safe. And yes, she joined the group for ice cream. My no would have been, they probably don't have vegan. I'd be more concerned about that. Like, go ahead and correct me in front of people. No, that's not true. I don't like being corrected in front of people. Who likes that? Does anyone like that? Leave a comment below. Anyway, empathy to revive a lifeless conversation. Oh, this will be interesting. We have all found ourselves in the midst of a lifeless conversation. Perhaps we're at a social event, hearing, listen up, neurodivergent. I'm going to circle this right now. Okay. We all have found ourselves in the midst of a lifeless conversation, perhaps at a social event, hearing words without feeling any connection to the speaker, or we're listening to a babble-a-thon, in a term coined by my friend Kelly Bryson, for someone who elicits in their listeners the fear of interminable conversation. Vitality drains out of conversations when we lose connection with the feelings and needs generating the speaker's words, and with the requests associated with those needs. This is common when people talk without consciousness of what they're feeling, needing, or requesting. Instead of being engaged in, oh, this is so fascinating. So many things are firing right now in my head. This is common when people talk without consciousness of what they're feeling, needing, or requesting. Instead of being engaged in the exchange. Holy crap, you guys, I'm sorry. Let me start this again. This is common when people talk without consciousness of what they are feeling, needing, or requesting. Instead of being engaged in an exchange of life energy with another human or other human beings, we see ourselves becoming waste buckets for their words. Waste baskets. How and when do we interrupt a dead conversation? That's funny too, because like, and again, a neurodivergent person like has these spools or strings of like monologue stuff that like we have to get out. It's painful, like physically painful to have one of those strings and like have to shut it down. I like don't even feel like I can. Anyway, how and when do we interrupt a dead conversation to bring it back to life? I'd suggest the best time to interrupt is when we've heard one word more than we want to hear. The longer we wait, the harder it is to be civil when we do step in. Our intention in interrupting is not to claim the floor for ourselves, but to help the speaker connect to the life energy behind the words being spoken. I feel like I'm always doing that. Like that, if I interrupt, it's like so like highlighting what they're saying and like trying to relate more. It's not just like, oh, I'm bored here. I mean, I've done that before too, but I'm usually one to just be like, that's the autistic part. It's like, I'm actually more likely to be like, I'm bored and just blurt that. I've said that to people before. I can't, I have no interest in what you're saying right now. And I'm really sorry. Oh, dear one. I wish I could have said that nicer. Anyway. Wait, I think I just said that. The longer we wait, the harder it is. Okay. Our intention in interrupting is not to claim the floor for ourselves, but to help the speaker connect to the life energy behind the words being spoken. We do this by tuning into the possible feelings and needs. Thus, if an aunt is repeating the story about how 20 years ago her husband deserted her with 2 small children, we might interrupt by saying, "So, Auntie, it sounds like you're still feeling hurt, wishing you'd been treated more fairly." People are not aware that it is often empathy that they're needing. Neither do they realize that they are more likely to receive that empathy by expressing the feelings and needs that are alive in them rather than recounting tales of past injustice and hardship. I really feel like this is a key to everything. Just I've been focusing a lot on the feelings part, but I haven't been linking it enough to the need. I've like heard this before so many times. Like I could have taught this in there, but it's one of those like just didn't really sink in until to the degree it has tonight. Another way to bring a conversation to life is to openly express our desire to be more connected and to request information that would help us establish that connection. Once at a cocktail party, I was in the midst of an abundant flow of words that to me, however, seemed lifeless. Excuse me, I broke in, addressing the group of 9 other people I found myself with. I'm feeling impatient because I'd like to be more connected with you, but our conversation isn't creating the kind of connection I'm wanting. I would like to know, I'd like to know if the conversation we've been having is meeting your needs, and if so, what needs of yours were being met through it. Oh, that's a conversation starter right there, isn't it? All 9 people stared at me as if I'd thrown a rat in the punch bowl. Fortunately, I remembered to tune into the feelings and needs being expressed through their silence. Are you annoyed with my interrupting because you would have liked to continue the conversation? I asked. After another silence, one of the men replied, "No, I'm not annoyed. I was thinking about what you were asking. No, I was enjoying the conversation. In fact, or I wasn't enjoying the conversation. In fact, I was totally bored with it. At the time, sorry, the one that interrupted in that way. Now that is something I feel like an autistic person would do is like, hey, are you guys getting anything out of this? And like I at least the version of how my brain is, I cannot stand elephants in the room. It's like, can we just look at this elephant? Oh my gosh. Okay, where was I now? At the time, I was surprised to hear her response because he had been the one doing most of the talking. Now, I'm no longer surprised. I have since discovered that conversations that are lifeless for the listener are equally so for the speaker. You may wonder how we can muster the courage to flatly interrupt someone in the middle of a sentence. I once conducted an informal survey posing the following question. If you are using more words than somebody wants to hear, do you want that person to pretend to listen to you or to stop you? Oh my God, I use too many words. I don't know how to stop that. No, I do. That's why I'm always feeling like, you guys, you shouldn't even be wanting to listen to me right now because this is just so long and I know I'm verbose and I wish I could help it more. So maybe if I just make that as entertaining as possible. And yet other neurodivergent people tell me that they understand things better from me than other people. I don't know. And I never know which is which. Yeah. Or like, I mean, not everyone, whatever. Okay. I keep losing my place. Okay. If you are using more words than somebody wants to hear, do you want that person to pretend to listen or to stop you? Of the scores of people I approached, all but one expressed a preference to be stopped. And that one was probably neurodivergent. Their answers gave me courage by convincing me that it is more considerate to interrupt people than to pretend to listen. All of us want our words to enrich others, not to burden them. Well, that's true. Um, Empathy for silence. One of the hardest messages for many of us is to empathize with silence. This is especially true when we've expressed ourselves vulnerably and need to know how others are reacting to our words. At such times, it's easy to project our worst fears onto the lack of response and forget to connect with the feelings and needs being expressed through the silence. Once, when I was working with the staff of a business organization, I was talking about something deeply emotional and began to cry. When I looked up, I received a response from the organization's director that was not easy for me to receive. Silence. He turns his face from me with what I interpreted to be an expression of disgust. Fortunately, I remembered to put my attention on what might be going on with him and said, I'm sensing from your response to my crying that you're feeling disgusted and you'd prefer to have someone more in control of his feelings consulting with your staff. If he had answered yes, I would have been able to accept that we had different values around expressing emotions without somehow thinking I was wrong for having expressed my own emotions as I did. But instead of yes, the director replied, no, not at all. I was just thinking of how my wife wishes I could cry. He went on to reveal that his wife, who was divorcing him, had been complaining that living with him was like living with a rock. During my practice as a psychotherapist, I was once contacted by the parents of a 20-year-old woman under psychiatric care who, for several months, had been undergoing medication, hospitalization, and shock treatments. She had become mute 3 months before her parents contacted me. When they brought her to my office, she had to be assisted because, left to herself, she didn't move. In my office, she crouched in the chair, shaking, her eyes on the floor, trying to connect empathically with the feelings and needs being expressed through her nonverbal message. I said, I'm sensing that you're frightened and would like to be sure that it's safe to talk. Is that accurate? She showed no reaction, so I expressed my own feeling by saying, I'm very concerned about you, and I'd like you to tell me if there's something that I could say or do to make you feel safer. Still no response. For the next 40 minutes, I continued to either reflect her feelings and needs or express my own. There was no visible response, nor even the slightest recognition that I was trying to communicate with her. Finally, I expressed that I was tired and that I wanted her to return to the following day. The next few days were like the first. I continued focusing my attention on her feelings and needs, sometimes verbally reflecting what I understood and sometimes doing so silently. From time to time, I would express what was going on in myself. She sat shaking in her chair, saying nothing. On the fourth day, when she still didn't respond, I reached over and held her hand. Not knowing whether my words were communicating my concern, I had hoped that physical contact might do so more effectively. At first contact, her muscles tensed and she shrank further back in her chair. I was about to release her hand when I sensed a slight yielding, so I kept my hold. After a few moments, I noticed a progressive relaxation on her part. I held her hand for several minutes while I talked to her as I had the first few days. Still, she said nothing. You know what? I wonder if she was seizing and needed to kind of be grounded, because I know when I go into shutdown with an autism like meltdown, shutdown process that's a part of it, and I'm in like almost this clenched seizure part where I go mute. I don't want Patrick to leave. I can hear him trying to talk to me, but I just cannot get the words out. And so like holding his hand, there's something about that that kind of like regulates me and like has me an anchor so I can seize out a little bit of my energy, and it helps kind of pull me out of it. I wonder if that was what the case here. Anyway, When she arrived the next day, she appeared even more tense than before, but there was one difference. She extended a clenched fist toward me while turning her face away from me. I was at first confused by the gesture, but then sensed she had something in her hand she wanted me to have. Taking her fist in my hand, I pried open her fingers. In her palm was a crumpled note with the following message: "Please help me say what's inside." I was elated to receive this sign of her desire to communicate. After another hour of encouragement, she finally expressed a first sentence slowly and fearfully. When I reflected back what I had heard her saying, she appeared relieved and then continued slowly and fearfully to talk. A year later, she sent me a copy of the following entries from her journal. Wow, this will be good. Well, I don't know. I'm excited and popcorn's ready. I came out of the hospital away from shock treatments and strong medicine. That was about April. The 3 months before that are completely blank in my mind, as well as the 3.5 years before April. They say that after getting out of the hospital, I went through a time at home of not eating, not talking, and not wanting to stay in bed all the time. Then I was referred to Dr. Rosenberg for counseling. I don't remember much of those next 2 or 3 months other than being in Dr. Rosenberg's office and talking with him. I'd begun waking up since the first session with him. I'd begun sharing with him things that bothered me, things that I would never have dreamed of telling anyone about. And I remember how much that meant to me. It was so hard to talk, but Dr. Rosenberg cared about me and showed it. And I wanted to talk with him. I was always glad afterwards that I had let something out. I remember counting the days, even the hours, until my next appointment with him. I've also learned that facing reality is not all bad. I'm realizing more and more of the things that I need to stand up to, things that I need to get out and do on my own. This is scary and it's very hard, and it's so discouraging that when I am trying really a lot, I can still fail so terribly. But the good part of reality is that I've been seeing that it includes wonderful things too. I've learned in the past year about how wonderful it can be to share myself with other people. I think I was mostly just one part that I think it was mostly just one part that I had learned about the thrill of my talking to other people and have them actually listen, even really understand at times. I continue to be amazed by the healing power of empathy. Time and again, I've witnessed people transcending the paralyzing effects of psychological pain when they have sufficient contact with someone who can hear them empathically. As listeners, we don't need insights into psychological dynamics or training in psychotherapy. What is essential is our ability to be present to what's really going on within, to the unique feelings and needs a person is experiencing in the very moment. Empathy lies in our ability to be present. Summary: our ability to offer empathy can allow us to stay vulnerable, diffuse potential violence, help us hear the word no without taking it as a rejection, revive a lifeless conversation, and even hear the feelings and needs expressed through silence. Time and again, people transcend the paralyzing effects of psychological pain when they have sufficient contact with someone who can hear them empathically. Oh my goodness. Yes. I think also just physical touch, all trauma is just such a disconnection from people, from feeling safe to be around each other. We're such pack animals. And when we are pushed out of the pack, a lot of us identify as lone wolves really early, but let's ask one true lone wolf if they had a secure attachment in their childhood. That's I'm not bashing people that are saying that, but usually, usually we're meant to be social. We're meant to connect. Anyway, okay. Much love. Bye. See you for the next chapters next time. Bye.